did it, Dad. Nah, no thumbs up, dang it. Got you, man. Finally got you. There's no clear data for how many of these actually exist, but it's been said that less than 250 were sold in North America between 2011 and 2012. This is the 2011 KTM RC8-R, and it is KTM's halo bike that you never knew existed. Now, I'm sure you guys know, but I am a lifelong, die-hard KTM hater. And I am a KTM hater for 3 reasons. 1, they have a reputation for making bikes that are so ready to race that they are completely unreliable, and they take away any type of reliability and any type of normal maintenance schedule. Fact, some KTMs, you have to change the oil every time you look at it. That's a fact. Reason number 2, it seems like every other day, KTM is ran out of money, going bankrupt, or being bought by someone else. That concerns me for a brand that I'm trying to buy their product. And 3, if KTMs are so good, they're so ready to race stock, why is every guy that rides a KTM, why did that guy replace 90% of those parts with aftermarket parts? Just why? At that point, why didn't you just buy a Honda for cheaper and replace all the Honda parts? Now, I will admit that most of my frustration comes from the KTM dirt bikes and the Supermoto bikes. That's been most of my experience. So I got to give the KTM Super Sport bike some leeway because I really don't have any problem. I have no reason to have any beef with this motorcycle. And I got to admit, it is really good looking. In 2008, KTM wanted to become more than just a dirt bike and supermoto brand. They wanted to get into racing and superbikes. So they came out with the RC8. And then in 2009, they came up with another RC8 with some improvements and a bigger engine and more power. And then in 2011, which this bike's 2011, they came up with the RC8-R. And this is the one that everyone wants. And it's got the biggest engine, the most improvements, and the most power. Now in a second, I'm going to tell you how much this bike weighs because it kind of blows my mind. But before that, let me tell you how it gets there with all the components. Starting with the power plant. This is a V-twin, high compression, 4 valves per cylinder, 2 spark plugs per cylinder, 1195 V-twin. And it's a beautiful looking engine and makes a lot of power. 175 horsepower to be exact, and 92 foot-pounds of torque. Now it takes that power through a wet clutch, not a dry clutch, because dry clutches are awful, and they were always awful, through a chain drive, and down to these 190 55 17-inch tires. So 175 horsepower out of a 1200cc engine. Put that into some context in terms of an automobile or a car. You know, most cars are 2.2 liter, 2 liters. This is the same amount of horsepower in your car with half the displacement and maybe a 16th of the weight, because this bike only weighs a whopping 408 pounds, which is incredibly light. Considering most bikes in this class range between 450 and 475, this is almost like a 65-pound weight reduction, which is incredible. When you just grab the bikes with your hands, you realize, you're like, hold on, is it all here? Is there an engine in here? It's feather light. And then when you're sitting on it with your feet, when you actually sit on the bike, you would think you're sitting on like a 250 Ninja for how incredibly light it is. Which is one of those things that I've always not respected, but I was always jealous and envious of with the KTMs. I'm riding a Honda or something else, and then I look at the KTM weight specs, and they're always significantly lighter than the bike that I'm riding. So, you know, once again, props to KTM for that. They spend a lot of time in engineering trying to make their bikes lighter, and that is how you win races. KTM's goal when making this bike was to make a refined powerhouse that was efficient and smooth and feels just as comfortable on the back roads as it does on the track. Now, make no mistake, as comfortable as this bike is a race bike. It is the top of the tier race bike. And one of the most important things about a race bike is the suspension. Everyone knows when you're modifying a bike for the track or to race, The biggest modification you could ever do is not more power, it's not a turbo, it's not a supercharger, it's suspension, dialing the suspension in for your specific weight. And of course, this is WP suspension. KTM does a lot of WP suspension components. They're a great company, and everything about the suspension is adjustable, so you can dial it in for yourself. They also have a steering damper, not dampener. If you say dampener too many times on the internet, you're gonna get destroyed in the comment section. Ask me how I know. But this is it's very simple. It's also made by WP. The reason they put these on the bikes, if you ever wondered, the reason they put these on the bikes is that because the front end, when the front end gets so light, because it has so much power that you can wheel it, when the front end comes up and you come down slightly off, you have the potential of getting something into like a tank slapper where it starts freaking out going like this. The steering damper is gonna dampen that to make it stiffer. Now I actually don't know how this way, this is harder, okay. There we go, that's harder. And then the other way is softer. So what you want to have it done is you want it, the faster you're going, you want it the harder to be. And then the slower you're going, you don't need it. This is the simplest way to accomplish a type of system. The coolest way is, I'm sure other companies have done it, I have not noticed it, but Honda has been doing this for the longest time. They have a HESD system, HESD. It's actually an electronically controlled steering damper. So it adjusts with how fast you're going. So if you're not moving at all, it's not on. And when you're going 180 miles an hour, it's on as much as you possibly can. Because it is something that does need to be kind of dynamic, which is why they make the valve fairly easy to adjust on the fly. Now, when it comes to the styling, I think it's cool. I think it's the coolest looking bike. A lot of people didn't like the front end. I thought that was kind of strange looking. I think it's cool. You know, when you see it, first of all, they went with very unique colors. They went with the KTM colors. But there's a lot of white on this bike, and you don't see very many white bikes. It does stand out amongst the crowd. All the sharp lines, when you see it, it's very clear. That's not Japanese, and it's not Italian. And then it's orange, so yeah, you know it's a KTM. So last year, I got a new pair of sunglasses. They were Warby Parkers, and they felt great. We even did a video about it, you might remember that. Well, they sent me a new pair. This is the sport model of Warby Parkers, and I'm pretty pumped. Warby Parker Sport. We got an Nalgene bottle, classic, tennis ball, love tennis ball. Hey Matt, that was the most perfect throw. Anyone, throw it back. Mediocre throw. That's where the sunglasses are, Warby Parker. They do a pretty good job of putting these in a nice case. Wow. They're soft right here, the part that actually touches your ear, and they're soft inside here. So what's touching you, it's nice and soft. I like that. Now for riding motorcycles, I need a little bit of flex right here because the helmet kind of squishes it. These feel perfect. Now, if you've not checked out Warby Parker before, they design everything in-house, and their frames start at just $95. It also includes prescription lenses, which have anti-scratch coating and anti-reflective lenses. You can order online, if that's what I did. The checkout process is super easy, or you can go to one of their stores. That's also really easy. My recommendation, don't just get one pair. I normally have like 3 or 4 pairs in all my different vehicles because I'm always losing one. And right now they got free shipping and free 30-day returns. So if you don't like the pair, they don't fit your face, whatever, send them back, no big deal. So if you want to check out these exact frames, these are the Flint frames, F-L-I-N-T. You can check them out in the description or the QR code right here. Let's get back to that KTM. Come on. Something interesting that they did though was you get the key for starting it, then you have a barrel key that pops the seat off. You pop the seat off, very easily accessible battery. It drives me nuts when these manufacturers are making batteries that you need tools to access. I love when you can just pop the seat off and it's right there because, you know, let's be honest, a lot of times you need to jump your bike or you need to jump your bike or replace the battery. So the thing that you would most need in your motorcycle is right there, very easily accessible. It's also cool, they get this seat where the seat, you know, sometimes motorcycle manufacturers have a pad back here because a bike this powerful is gonna push you back, and they just have the seat kind of fold up. We in? No. So everything is, I don't know what that is. Lock it back in there. and top and high RPMs. It's a blast to ride. Now, in classic KTM fashion, they spared no expense in most of the items, and I have to admit I do like that about KTM, where they generally just put the nice stuff on first. However, KTM riders are always replacing all their stuff anyway. But it's a hydraulic clutch, and the clutch is it's a one finger clutch. It's extremely light. It feels great. The shifting on the bike, very precise, easy, no clutch shifting, and there's no slop in anywhere. It's a great, I mean, I really have to admit, it is a great feeling motorcycle. Now next, let's talk about the engine braking. So I'm going 50 miles an hour. I'm in second gear. Engine braking is not very aggressive. It feels pretty much what a sport bike should be. If we're in the gear I should be in, fourth gear, roll up, get off the bike. It pretty much slows down. It's pretty much a non-issue. This is generally how I like bikes to feel. Sometimes you hop on a motorcycle and the engine braking is like, it's like a Tesla. Like, I don't even need brakes. The engine braking is so intense. I don't prefer that. I like this. Obviously, it's gonna have some, and this is a good amount. This is also the type of bike that's probably gonna get you in a decent amount of trouble. This is the kind of bike that's gonna get you in some trouble, unless you have some really good self-control, which I don't. Now, a lot of times you jump on a new motorcycle you haven't ridden, it takes you a little while, maybe like 5 minutes to 2 minutes, to get used to the throttle response if it's unique. A lot of like the Yamahas, the MT bikes, the YZ bike, mainly the MT bikes had a kind of a goofy, twitchy throttle response. They'd go from 0 to like 15, and it was just it didn't feel right. I think they made a tune to fix it. I jumped on this bike. I instantly felt like I've been riding this bike for my entire life. It just felt exactly the way it should. But I'm having a really hard time hating this motorcycle. So the way they've got the gauge set up, and this is pretty typical of a gauge that you would see in the 2000s. Now they're getting a little more tech. You can watch movies on your gauges, and it's not as simple and as clear as some of the Japanese companies have made theirs, where pretty much all you see is a tachometer, a gear indicator, and then you see the speed. This has numbers all over the place. It's not as simple as other gauges, but you get used to it. You know where to look. Maybe they have got a race mode in here. I haven't figured it out, but they definitely could have made that a little more simple. But in terms of visibility, it's very visible. It's a very sunny day outside. It's got this big windshield, and that gives you enough of a shade that I can see it. Even when the sun hits directly on it, I can still see everything. I can still see all the numbers and my fuel and all that stuff like that. So in that situation, I'd say it's pretty good, but it's a little complicated. I think they were trying to accomplish too much. But if that's the only thing I have to complain about, that's not that big of a deal. Now, in terms of sport bikes and super sport bikes, I've only been on this for a little while, but depending on the bike, The front clip-ons are really, really low. This doesn't feel that bad. I'm a bigger guy, I'm 6'2". Some bikes I feel a little cramped on. I feel great riding this bike. It's not putting too much like excessive pressure on my wrist. But you know, the longer you ride, the more you really start to feel that. So for me, at my riding level, I've ridden a lot of stuff. There's some bikes you jump on and it's like, man, that bike is, the way the power comes in, the way the power delivery and the power band kicks in, and the way the throttle response is, it all kind of lines up for, man, you need to be you need to know that bike, and you need to have some talent to ride that bike. And you know, those bikes are kind of horrifying to ride. And then some bikes you jump on and you feel so at home, like you've been riding that bike your whole life, and it just breeds confidence. You're like, you want to do things you probably really don't have any, you really shouldn't be doing. This is one of those bikes. I did not think I'd feel so comfortable on a KTM. I'm kind of embarrassed that I do. And I jump on this bike and I'm thinking, man, let's go do some track days. Let's go hit some twisty corners. I feel very at home riding this bike, and this is the first time riding it. So when it comes to ride comfort, you know, it is a sport bike, so they can only be so comfortable, but this is pretty comfortable. I feel, I gotta admit, I'm feeling pretty good on this bike. Part of it may be the way the guy set it up before me. I don't know what's been changed. Obviously the bike is, what, 15 years old? Wow, this bike is 15 years old. I can't even believe that. So this is running Brembo brakes. Up here, when I get this chance, I'm gonna do a heavy braking test on it. See what that feels like. They feel great. Now obviously they're cold, but you know, they're Brembo brakes. Then the way stuff like this works out is, at least I think it works out, is KTM, a big name, they call the guys at Brembo, hey, here's their specifications, we need the baddest set of brakes you can put on this bike, and they put them on. Let's try it again. Yeah, it feels great. Some bikes you ride and it just kind of breeds confidence. Somehow I took away my, there we go, my gauge indicator. Some bikes you ride and you grab on the brakes and you're like, oh shoot, I don't want to put myself in this situation. Other bikes you grab on the brakes and you're like, yeah, well, I'll ride a little closer to my buddies than I normally would. This is one of those bikes. So this bike, you know, partly it's a large displacement bike. It's a, you know, pretty much a 1200, but also because of the V-twin, it is a great bike for wheelies. It has a ton of torque. I think it's close to 90 foot-pounds of torque at, I forget what the RPM was. It might have been 4,500 RPM. It might be lower than that. But it has tons of torque, which makes it a really great bike for just pulling that front end up. And it feels great. Extremely well balanced, but all these things are things that you would expect for KTM to jump in and make a super sport motorcycle. You know, you have pretty high expectations for a super sport bike. The other interesting about these bikes is they're very rare, but they've done a great job at holding their value. I was on Marketplace earlier looking at these and seeing what they were going for, and some of these are going for 13,000 bucks. I'm not. That's pretty impressive. Another feature I didn't notice until I just hit the red limit was it's got a shift light. It's pretty bright. It lets you know, hey, now's a good time to shift. It was quick. It's hard to get these leader bikes, the 0 to 60, faster than like 2 secs, because you just can't, either you're looping out or you can't keep the traction. This bike is pretty, it's before all the tech started jumping in and pretty much the motorcycle's riding itself at that point. This is a pretty analog motorcycle where it's you and the bike, which, you know, you gotta love that. It makes riding a little bit more fun. You know, if when you walk away from riding this bike, you know that was something that you did and not everything that the motorcycle did. Somehow KTM figured out a great way to make a, you know, even though their goal was to make a very good race bike, a good super sport race bike, I think somehow they accomplished making a really good street fighter bike that looks awesome, you can do track days with, but just have a great time riding this thing around, hitting the twisties, even commuting if you wanted to. So the bike is incredibly fast, incredibly fun for the street, very appropriate for the track. You could ride this thing to the track, you can do a track day, you could ride the thing home. You can't put a passenger on it, not the way this one's set up. This bike has gotten me reconsidering whether I would ever put a KTM in my garage. We'll see you guys next time, and remember, it's not what you're riding, but where you're going.